Today's episode is a little different because we are talking to a mom who recently decided to sell her franchise of nearly 13 years of Dream Dinners. Jean Colarusso is a doer. She's an entrepreneur by heart and loved running this business of helping parents to create meals for their families and for strengthening their homes. But it was after 13 years of running this business that she decided it was time to take a step back. So today we're going to talk about how to buy and also sell a franchise, but more than anything, listening to your gut when you know that it's time to make a pivot and a change in your motherhood journey. So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? We'll listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Call Me CEO. And I have been looking forward to this interview from the beginning because my dear friend, Jean Colarusso, is with us here today. And her perspective on life is one of my very favorites. She is a really hard worker. She's also an incredible, very present and involved mother. And I cannot wait for you to hear about her journey and how she recently decided to sell a franchise that she owned for nearly 13 years and decided it was time to make a pivot. So Jean, thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome. I'm super excited to be here.
So tell our audience, I know that first of all, can we just stop for a moment and recognize that Jean is 38 weeks pregnant and made time for us today? Like, thank you. I can't even imagine that kind of craziness. And tell our audience about the size of your family, what you're expecting, and all of that about you.
And I appreciate you saying that in case I get out of breath, where I'm like, ooh, okay, I can't breathe. So this is my 6th baby boy. Not planned, but it'll be fun. It'll be exciting. And we're, any day now or in the next 2 weeks, we'll have this baby. And so my oldest is 14. And then I have a 13-year-old, 10-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So a nice spread of crazy, loud boys. And I have very strict instructions that they should be quiet. So hopefully you won't even know that I have 5 kids in the background.
Are you telling me they're all at home homeschooling right now too?
Yeah. So we decided to homeschool this year because the idea of like the, learning online and then in school was a little intimidating, actually. I didn't know what to expect. So I figured since, I'm going to be home from work, I might as well homeschool and have this quality time with them. It's actually, I thought I would hate it, and I've actually really loved it. We've had a really good time.
Well, tell our audience about how you made your at-home schooling extra special.
Well, so the stars aligned and I took all 5 of my kids to Costa Rica, and we went almost for 2 months, and it was amazing. My boys are in the Spanish immersion program at school, and so I don't speak Spanish, and I wanted them to be able to continue practicing the language. And so the idea popped into my head, and I kind of pitched it to my husband a little bit. I'm like, wouldn't that be crazy if I just went to Costa Rica or somewhere Spanish speaking for a couple months? Wouldn't that be crazy? And he's like, yeah, that would be crazy. And then I booked my flights a couple days later. And I was like, so you thought that was a good idea, right? So it was really incredible. And it was fun to get out. It was fun to get out of the groove because I think 2020 was really challenging for kids and adults. And for us, we were really close. We just had each other and the beach. So, and monkeys. Really, it was great.
Wow. That sounds like a little boy's dream, like Swiss Family Robinson brought to life. And how did you manage to keep your cool being pregnant? I mean, my hormones when I'm pregnant are all over the place. And then on top of that, 5 boys, how do you manage that all?
Well, with every kid, you just lower your expectations. So, I've, maybe held my temper for my first 2. Actually, the older my kids get, the more I love them, and so being pregnant with all those kids, it wasn't that hard because I have a 14 and 13-year-old who are so responsible and so helpful. And they stepped up, and I mean, they're just great. And so they knew that we were on this adventure. And I think because everyone was so, um, happy and full of vitamin D, we didn't have the same expectations that we did at home. So all of that stress and all of that anxiety just was gone. And we just used the time to learn and find people to play soccer with and have adventures. So
Wow.
it was really great. Yeah. And if I was tired, it was fine. We just wouldn't leave. And we would just have a rest day, and they would go to the pool and I would take naps. So it
Wow.
was great.
You're making me want to get my kids out of school the last 2 months and just go somewhere. That sounds amazing.
You should. Really, they aren't learning much anyway, so you might as well.
Yeah.
But we are going to do school again this fall. They do want to do school, so we aren't going to homeschool again. And I'm excited for them to be able to go back to school and have real teachers who are trained. But I will miss this time where they really band together, and we're working on ways to figure out how to help them unwind from school. Because one thing that I've noticed is when they get home from school, we almost needed like a detox.
Mm.
And now we don't need that. So I want to kind of keep that lifestyle in the fall. So.
Oh, well, that's a really good point, because I feel like when my kids get home from school, they too want a snack, they want to eat something, and they want to veg because they're just so wiped. Like by the end of the day, they just want to lay around and watch TV. And that's the last thing that they need.
Yeah.
How do you think you'll keep that spirit of adventure alive?
I am not sure.
With a newborn.
Sure.
I mean, goodness, Jean, that's amazing.
Well, we have some time, so he won't be a newborn for long.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be starting slow. Maybe that's the key, where I tend to like jump in like head first and look back later. And I've really learned to slow down. So maybe that's the key, where instead of rushing their snack and all of this after school and then rushing off to all their sporting events, maybe just sitting down for a little bit and having that snack together, like slowly, maybe that's where I'll start, is just trying to not rush everything that I used to do all day into 3 hours before bedtime. So
yeah. That's really good advice. I love that, to not to rush. Because I think that is, if there's one thing the pandemic has taught us, is that rushing isn't better. That's not, I think, as the times that my kids and I are the most stressed is if we're rushing, hurry and put your shoes on, hurry and come out. That's the lifestyle that I feel like we've kind of gotten used to in America, but that's not at all the best way. So I think that's really good advice, to just take a moment and be present.
Yeah, we'll see if I can pull it off. I'll let you know.
Okay.
It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it.
Yeah.
So I think so.
So take our audience is listening, and there's so much to unpack here that you've done and ways that you have built your life and your business. And you are a recent owner of a franchise called Dream Dinners. And I want to go back to the story of how you decided to start your own franchise, and then also what you did to build it from that point.
So the way I got started with the franchise is I was actually a customer, and I went with my sister every month, and we kind of prepped our meals and had a really good time. And then one of the times when we were going through and making our dinners, my sister kind of looked over and she's like, "You should do this." Like, I should do this. She's like, "You'd be awesome at this." I'm like, I would be. You're right. And then I kind of thought about it. And then again, like 3 days later, I go home and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think if I, started a business?" to my husband? And he was like, "Oh yeah, that would be great." I'm like, "Okay, good." Because I have already started buying this franchise in Orem. And so, basically sign here, here, and here. And, don't worry, we're just going to put our house on the line. Don't even worry about it. And it was a longer process than that, but it really, at the same time, we just kind of jumped into it. I always knew I would own my own business. Like I've always kind of started little businesses, always had an entrepreneurial mindset. and coming up with new ideas and that passion, I love it. And so all through college, a lot of my jobs were jobs that I created myself. And I still do that as a mom, where if my kids want to buy something, then they need to find something to add value and start a business of their own. And so we went into that. I had one kid at the time, one little boy, and he was just a couple months old. And we ended up buying, I had a business partner, a really good friend of mine and neighbor, and we just kind of jumped into it and went running. We bought it in 2007, and then 2008 came along, and I learned a lot of life lessons. My husband's a general contractor. He has his own business, and 2008 hit small businesses and construction pretty hard. And in hindsight, I'm so grateful for how hard it was, because it made us realize that, that it really is whatever energy you bring to it. And so if you want to keep going, then you just have to go, and not give up. But if you want to give up, that's okay too. And if you want to stop and move a different direction, that's okay. And so we went through that. 13 years later, I decided to sell. And I probably held on to it too long because I really loved what I did. I loved going into work. I loved my customers. I loved the idea of like dinner time. I love cooking, and the idea that I was providing a service that I was almost part of their family. And my customers came every month. And so my friends were there. And so the idea of selling, I really dragged my feet for years, even though I knew it was time. And you were asking me earlier how I knew it was time to sell. And, I never lost the passion. I never lost the drive. I did work hard until the very end. But at the same time, I kind of knew that it would be better with new, fresh hands. Where I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. You just kind of know. And then sometimes you jump right into it and you put it up for sale. And it's not an easy process selling something that you love, because you have to you talk to people. You have to tell them all the good and the bad and really be honest with yourself to say, this is not necessarily the easiest thing you'll ever do, but hopefully you love it. And when you love it, it works. And so, and then the sales fall through. So you have to the process of selling is difficult, I find, because you have all these financials and then all of these prospective buyers, and you meet with them, and then sometimes it'll fall through. And so you have to be careful to not let your foot go out the door until papers are signed, because your business still needs that CEO. Your business still needs you. Your customers still need you. And if you say, oh, I'm selling and check out, then it will start to fall, I would think. So we were really careful not to do that. And, but I did eventually find a wonderful person who took it over, and she's doing so good. And she's so good at so many things I'm not good at. And it's been so fun to watch her succeed. It's hard to buy a business in 2020. So I feel like she has a similar story now to mine, where she buys it and then, but I still love it, and I'm there to support her. But I also told her not to go to me first, because otherwise I'll put my foot back in the door and I'll try to be like, well, when I did it like this. And so I've also been really intentional about having a clean cut and saying, you don't need me to coach you, but I will answer questions. And if she did want coaching, I obviously would give it to her, but she doesn't need it. And she's doing just fine. So
for those
that's kind of my story.
Excuse me. For those that are listening and might not know what Dream Dinners is, could you explain what kind of a business it is? I don't think we kind of skipped over that part a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best. So basically it's a commercial prep kitchen, and families will come in and make a month's worth of dinners in about an hour. And then you take those dinners home and put them in your freezer. So then every time you want to cook dinner, you already have it prepped and ready to go. And the idea of these busy moms and this busy lifestyle that we have that you touched on earlier, at least you have dinner, and dinner is such a stress point for so many moms and dads out there that I think that was the rewarding part where I was really we really did solve a problem.
Yeah.
It really did offer a solution. And it's a franchise. It's a nationwide franchise, mostly on the West Coast, but they're all over dotted. And there's 2 here in Utah, 1 in Orem, and then the other one is in Salt Lake City.
Have you been thinking about trying to discover your why and maybe defining your purpose a little more clearly? Well, I created a free 5-day email sequence that helps you do just that. It helps you dive into who you are, what your special talents are, and even pushes you a little bit out of your comfort zone with asking questions of people that are close to you. So go to callmeceopodcast.com to access that. And I have a little sneak peek of something up and coming about how to become a virtual assistant. So if that is something that you would think you might want to do in the future, stay tuned, get subscribed to the newsletter so you can hear about all the details, because we will have special discounts for those who are subscribed to our email list. You can go there and find more information at callmeceopodcast.com or camillewalker.co. Would you say that buying that franchise was something you saw yourself doing, or how did you decide, if someone was listening to this and thinking, I want to buy a franchise, what is the process of that? Like setting it up, and did you create the location or was it already existing? And then what are the steps of that?
The original plan actually was to open something similar to it, right? You get the idea and you're like, oh, this is so fun. This would be fun to do. And Utah's a big market. There's lots of families here. So I'm like, I can go somewhere else. We can do our own. My business partner happened to be a chef and worked at a catering company as the executive chef over there. So I knew we could handle the food side. I do business and sales. And so we were going to start our own. And then when I was talking to my sister, the same sister who kind of pushed me in that direction, she was like, franchises have all of this research that say, first-time business owners will succeed, that, they're more likely to succeed with a support structure behind them. And so we then started looking into the franchise instead, and we weighed both options. And what happened is, instead of opening one, we ended up buying the store that was already opened, already had a customer database, and that I was already attending. So it was close, and it just kind of happened that way. I find that as long as I keep moving forward, like, doors open and I can peek into them and be like, oh, I like that. And then I just walk in.
Yeah, I believe in that too. There's a recent book that I just read called Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. And he said that would be considered a green light when your path kind of leads you a certain way, and then it feels good and things just kind of line up. And, for us, I think we might call it the purpose that God has for us, or that higher power, where if you're in tune with that and you're following that path, things fall into place easily that way. And I can't imagine that this was easy. So it sounds like you fell into it quite easily, that it felt right. But what did you learn along the way of owning a franchise? I can't imagine that would be easy.
With the particular franchise that I have too, I always had to be invested in it. Mm-hmm. It was never like a turnkey, get it set up, hire people and walk away. And that's okay. Actually, I think I liked that more. And maybe if I didn't, then I could have turned it turnkey. But some other things that I learned along the way is, that book is, I will have to read that. I found that when it got really hard, that I had to, make payroll. There were always months like that where it was really challenging as a small business owner, especially having 4 kids while owning it. That's 4 pregnancies. And my poor employees had to go through 4 pregnancies with me. So, but I would take maternity leave and leave a month and then come back and try to get all this new energy into it. And what we found is that we would always look for the opportunities. So as soon as we were like, okay, we would come to a roadblock, I would be able to stop and look around. And there was always something there. There's always more customers to find. There's always a new service and a new way to provide a relief to parents, as long as you're listening and you're willing to, give it a try.
Okay, 4 pregnancies, you're running this business. How you have a husband, you have a home, you have your own meals to plan. What are some ways that you were able to balance or manage all of that? What are some tips that you could give to women running businesses right now that are so demanding?
I think a tip that I would give is to be really self-aware. Write down what you're good at and focus on what you're good at, and don't try to do it all. And then surround yourself with people who are good at other things. I know what I'm good at. And instead of focusing on like, oh, I don't know how to do that, I better read a book and learn how to do that, I just was like, I don't know how to do that. I need to find someone who's really good at that. And I had the opportunity of having amazing employees. One in particular, Joy Morris, was my manager for years and years. And we got to work with each other for, like 11 years we were together. And we relied on each other. And again, we were both self-aware. And it made it so we could work together, because I knew when I could step in, and I could tell when I needed to pass something off because it wasn't in my strength. And so I think that the ability to let things go and the ability to let other people take care of things, not even necessarily your way, can really launch your business in a better way.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I agree with that wholeheartedly. That is something that I've seen again and again for myself and for everyone else, really, that when you tap into accepting that you cannot do it all and that you need to know yourself well enough to give yourself the grace and permission to have help from people that know how to do it better in those spots that you don't.
Yeah. And I think that's hard to do. And
Mm-hmm.
even in business, I think it might be easier because you're supposed to have like a team. You're supposed to have employees. It's not all things are one person operations. And but at home and as a mom, I've had to remind myself of that lesson and realize that I'm not good at everything, and that's okay. Because what I am good at, if I focus on that, then I can bless lives around me, as opposed to focusing on all the things that I just can't seem to do. Like I'm not very good at laundry. And so whatever, I've let that go because I'm good at other things. I'm good at helping my kids start businesses, and that's a strength of mine. So we do a lot of that where we talk about opportunities and I teach them, and maybe I make them act like adults a little too soon. My 14-year-old is probably a little too responsible for 14, but I think they're learning whatever I can give them instead of me beating myself up for not being able to be good at, everything.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that that's something that a lot of entrepreneurial moms want for their children too, is to feel empowered and to have ideas. And so I'm curious, what are some of the business ideas that you've done with your kids?
Well, and it changes with the
Yeah,
kids and what they want to do.
sure.
When they were little, they wanted to make money. I don't remember what they were saving up for, but they're like, Mom, will you buy it? And I'm like, no, make your own money. You're 6 years old now, gosh, why do you rely on me for everything? No, but they wanted that. And I'm like, well, there's always money to be had. You just have to figure out what people will buy from you.
Right.
And so we were walking through the grocery store, buying just like normal groceries. And I put 3 loaves of bread in the cart, while I walked out. And then my oldest, who she was probably 6, and he was like, well, you buy bread. And so everyone buys bread. So I want to make bread and sell bread. And so we learned how to bake bread together, and he had a bread business, and he and his little 5-year-old brother walked door to door with samples, and we kind of came up with a plan, and they set up people on a subscription where they sold bread every week.
Wow.
And it was fun. Yeah, it was fun to watch them do that. And now they have a little after school camp that they do, where they, on Tuesdays, they take a bunch of kids to the park and they run them wild. The advantages of boys is they need to get that energy out. Otherwise, testosterone will build up. And so it's a win-win for me as well. And they take these kids and they came up with a pricing structure. And I have to help them sometimes to be like, okay, you cannot charge, $20 for a loaf of bread. And well, you can, and they'll buy it once, but they won't buy it again. So again, with the kids too, they're like, well, we should charge this much. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't want to charge too much, but you don't want to charge too little. So let's research what other people are charging, stuff like that. And then I have another son, he's 10 now, and he loves animals. So he will find people to, take care of their animals if they're out of town, and go check on them and walk the dogs and all of those kinds of things. And it was kind of in the same realm of like, well, what do you like doing? And what are you good at? And we constantly talk about stuff like that. And my older two they love sports and they love running, and they're good with kids. Being the oldest of a big family, I think they have an advantage. And so, it works. My 7-year-old wants money too. They all just want money, and Same. I try not to, because it gives them freedom. I think it helps them to feel that empowerment that you were saying that all humans want. And so my 7-year-old sells eggs. We have chickens. Like, rewind 3 years ago, I never would have been like, I'm going to have 6 kids, be a stay-at-home mom, and have chickens, but here we are. And so he sells the eggs, and not a ton of them, which is nice because he's only 7. He doesn't need to work every day, but he sells those. And then my sister actually has like 19 or 20 chickens. Wow. And so she always has this excess of eggs. And so he worked out a system with her too, where he can buy them wholesale from her and then sell them at retail. So that way, because we don't get, 20 eggs a day, and he wants to sell a certain number of dozen a week. And so I was like, well, you need to figure out how to get more eggs. And so he did.
Wow.
And my sister's really nice.
That is amazing. Jean, you are such an amazing woman. I could talk to you forever and ever. And I love your approach to motherhood, and that I think you've really learned how to not sweat the small stuff, and that it's all small stuff. Building a successful business takes a clear understanding of your goals and where you want to go. That is why I love Cube Money. It is an app card combo that allows me to assign a purpose to each dollar in my checking account. No more wondering where you stand in regards to your bills, because with each transaction, you make a mental check-in with your balance. Create goals and stick with them in your lifestyle and business so you can live more and stress less. Go to cubemoney.com/Camille to get started today. That's Cube spelled Qube money.com today, and make those dreams a reality. What would be your advice now that you're at home? You told me before we started this call that you said you feel busier now than you did when you were working. What is some advice or something that you've learned transitioning from being a working mom to a stay-at-home mom?
It is a lot busier than I thought it would be. Yeah. And I think it has to do with the fact that I'm always home. And so I'm always on. And I think in the fall, when my kids are in school, it won't be quite as crazy, but I don't know. It just goes and goes and goes. One surprising thing being home is I didn't realize how much I would be home. Like, sometimes there's days that I haven't left the house, and it's so strange to me because I'm used to being out and about. And I think that's where I feel more busy now, is because when I was working, I had my commute and I could run errands on my way home or something like that, but not anymore. I almost have to plan that excursion. And if I leave the house, it's like a big deal. I mean, I only comb my hair like once a week now. So it's pretty great. Yeah. But I do love it. And,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you saying that I don't sweat the small stuff. I actually think I do, sweat the small stuff, but my husband doesn't. And so he helps to even that out. So I do the big things and the big picture things, and he helps it. So then we kind of run smoothly around. And so even in our marriage, we've had to be like, okay, I am not good at this and you are, so I'm going to need your help. And otherwise I break down. As I don't know, a lot of people, um, have their own struggles. I struggle with depression a lot. And so if I try to do things that frustrate me, or not frustrate, well, that kind of sounds like entitled or whatever. But sometimes it rears its ugly head and I can't function. And I have to be okay with that. And I have to be really realistic that it's a part of my life. And there are days when I'm going to cry all day long, and my kids have to learn why that's happening. And so we take a lot of time to acknowledge and educate that. And also, if I am losing my cool, I'm like, okay, like we're here and we've practiced this. When mommy gets to this point, everybody run to your room for your safety, And so it's all about, like I said, just being really self-aware and taking the good with the bad. Like I'm okay with the fact that that's a part of my life, because I can still do good things and I can still make great things happen, even though I have to constantly remind myself that depression is real. It's a part of me, and it's okay.
Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that. Is that something that you've ever sought out medication for? Is it something that goes up and down with pregnancy and newborn? What tactics and tools have you used to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I take medication every day, and at the beginning I really didn't want to, and so I would take it and I'd feel better and I'd go off and then I'd crash and all of these silly things, because I was like, oh, I don't need that. I'm a happy person. And I am a happy person. And I do love life, and I have a really great life. But I would go off the medication and then it would just come right back. And so I've had to work with some doctors who are like, it's okay. Depression is not, it doesn't define you. It's just a part
Right.
of something. It's just a part of the journey for you. And so you need to accept it and learn. And so now I take it every day, and I'm like, it's okay if I have to take this every day for the rest of my life, because it doesn't change who I am. It just, it's just medicine. And if I have a headache, I take ibuprofen. So it's not anything different than that. And I have done therapy a lot before, mostly after, if it gets bad enough, if I'm under enough pressure that it gets worse, then I've done talk therapy. And that's usually after I have babies. I'm feeling a lot more hormonal, because then you have postpartum depression with your chronic depression, and it gets pretty bad.
Yeah.
Or even if it's just really stressful, like I know my triggers now. And so I have a really good team behind me with my therapist as well. So I feel like all of the lessons I learned in business, I apply in my own personal life, and it makes me more successful to say, okay, I need help with this, and that's okay. Good. I can pay someone to help me. Yay.
I love that perspective that it's a team. Like, and if you had a broken arm or a headache, like you said, there is no shame in having that team behind you and those things that are put in place to help us to live better, healthier lives. I mean, I think it's something that we all need to hear more of. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
With coming into your sixth baby born, what would you do differently with this sixth time around? Is there anything?
I wish I could have had a girl, but that was, I think that would have been really fun to be able to have a girl. But I'm not sure what I'm going to do differently. It's actually been a pretty emotional pregnancy, because I don't really want to have 6 kids. I never really wanted a big family. And so, but here we are with 6 kids, and I have to tell myself that it's okay that I can't love them all okay, I do love them all. Let me rephrase that. It's okay that I can't spend one-on-one time with all, one kid all day long. Because there's more love in my house because there's more people. And so that baby is going to not only feel love from me and his dad, but his 5 older brothers who are so excited. And the pie is big enough that there's going to be enough love in our house, even though there's 6 kids and I'm split in so many different directions, that it's going to be okay. But I don't actually remember what the question was. Did I answer it?
Is there anything you would do different?
Differently? What do you mean?
I don't know. Like how often do we get to talk to a woman going into their 6th pregnancy, delivery, having a newborn baby? Is there anything that you've learned along the way? Maybe for someone listening that has 1 or 2 that you're like, oh, I've learned this along the way. Or maybe, oh, I really want to do for me, if I was having a baby right now, I wish I would have had a newborn photographer in the delivery room with me. That's something I would have done differently that I didn't do before. So I don't know if there's something like that.
Okay. I think that if I were giving advice to someone who, had 2 or 3 kids and they were still growing their family, I would say to trust your older kids that they are there to help and that they can learn and let them love on your kids. Before the baby came, and this I did actually with my 5th baby, and I'm doing it again, is we talk about, how to take care of a baby. We find other babies and practice changing diapers together. And I teach them and I empower them. So then it's not all on my shoulders.
I love that. Yes.
So yeah, that would be my advice. And I'm doing it again this time.
Yes.
I don't know what I would do differently though. Probably just not have a 6th kid. Yeah.
So funny. No, but I love that because I think I have been guilty of that with older siblings where I'll be like, oh, you're too close, or, oh no, you've held it for long enough. Or, you know what I mean? Like where it becomes more of this protective thing so that it is me as the mom doing most of it. And I love that
everything.
Advice of just teaching them how to change a diaper and the sponge baths and all of those other things that can be a lot when you have everything going on. I think that's fantastic advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And whatever it is that is giving you worries, like we talk about the shaking baby syndrome and don't put the baby on their stomach and all of those things. And we live in a time now that there's so much easy, they have swaddle blankets, with my first, I had to learn how to swaddle myself and their little arms would escape. And now I just straight jacket them in with Velcro and duct tape and it works awesome. So, yeah.
Well, Jean, you were right in saying that there's enough love for that baby. My goodness, that baby is so lucky to come into your family. And I love watching videos and photos that you share online of the things you're doing together. And what a lucky baby. You and your husband are incredible parents. And I just am so happy for you.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people here would love to connect with you or follow you online. I don't know if you have a public forum where they could do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm just barely kind of getting started on Instagram, where I want to start sharing our travel adventures and our, the recipes that we have and stuff like that. So then I can go back and remember them. So on Facebook, I'm Jean Colarusso, and just look for the, headliner with a bazillion children, and then you'll know it's me. And on Instagram, I'm at Cook with Jean with underscore. So cook underscore with underscore Jean.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you, and you are incredible.
Thank you. Thanks for thinking of me and letting me come on the show. I'm excited.
Today's review comes from Court Cott. Camille is such a natural interviewer. She knows the right questions to ask and dives deeper when needed. Such an informative and uplifting podcast, not just for CEOs, but for anyone. Well, thank you, Court Cott, so much for that review. It truly makes all of this effort worth it. And I hope that you learned something from today's episode. And if you did, please share on social media and tag me at Call Me CEO Podcast. If you want to join a community of like-minded women who are there to support and rally behind each other, join our Facebook group at Call Me CEO Community. I hope to see you there.